welcome to our last session of the day. My name is Sri Hamid. I'm the Industry Marketing Manager for the manufacturing sector. And I'm joined by 4 panelists, Craig Ferry from CertainTeed, Chris Pereira from Colgate Palmolive, Lauren Vale from Cargill, and Stephen Matthews from Campbells. So, yeah, we didn't select them because they all C names, but so today, we're going to tackle a fairly complex and meaty topic. If I had my way, this would be more of a fireside chat. So let's think of this as a start to a conversation. So first of all, let me try to set the stage on this topic. So what have we learned about multi-site projects over the last 10 years, right? So standardization, I don't like using the word standardization because that's really not the right term, because at the core of the challenge is this tension between common versus unique. And as a software provider of platforms, platforms are meant to be flexible, and we have a number of platforms, whether that's Pi, whether that's System Platform, MES, that we've designed it in such a way that you can customize it to address the needs of a site or a line or a specific asset that's on one end of the spectrum, or on the other end of the spectrum, you're looking for commonality across the BU, across the enterprise, and even across industries. So like integration would be a topic where there's a standard way of doing it if you're integrating to SAP, etc. So we build these platforms designed for flexibility, and then we give these to customers, and at the bottom they're trying to make these platforms work and address these whole set of challenges, right? Product variety, process variety on the plant floor,
culture.
Exactly, and it runs the gamut, and it's different from customer to customer. And so many of you have deployed these solutions for well more than 10 years, but I'm thinking what we've learned in the past 10 years is that we've done most of the multi-site projects in the last 10 years. And if I'm being candid, I will say that we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And you have to have seen the good, the bad, the ugly for a discipline to emerge. Right? So what has emerged is the following. There are 3 critical work streams when you think of an overall program. So the software lifecycle management work stream, that is something AVEVA has ownership of. And we work very closely with the client to design the right functional template to meet their needs. Then we will be working with systems integration partners on the project and execution management work stream, right? And it's a combination of us, the systems integration team, the client teams, etc. And the third critical work stream, perhaps the most important, is what we call value and change management, right? Sometimes we're involved, but most of the time we're not. So what we want to have is a conversation around these work streams, and what I'd like to have the panel do is start by introducing their companies and the programs that they manage. And the reason we've asked these 4 companies to come present is that they've been on the journey for multiple years, and they can share some insights with us. So with that, let me go ahead and get started on the company introductions. We can have, let's see, Stephen from Campbell's go first.
Sure. You want me to come over there?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Sri mentioned, Stephen Matthews, Campbell Soup Company. Director of Manufacturing Services. Been with Campbell's 20 years and focused in this space for really the last decade almost. We've got an extremely rich heritage at Campbell's, right? So 14,000 employees, 95% of people have at least one of Campbell's brands or products in their home, which show of hands, who's the 5% that doesn't? Have a talk out in the hall. So we have 13, we basically recently have gone through restructuring. So we've got 2 core divisions. Campbell Snacks makes up 46% of our $8.6 billion business. And Campbell's Meals and Beverage, which is our margin engine, fueling the growth on the snack side. So much more mature and stabilized on the Meals and Beverage side. So just a little bit about our digital manufacturing journey. So we've got 20 sites in total, 20 plus sites, I say. Some of those are raw materials, spice plants, tomato paste plants, but 16 snacks, 4 thermal. And in terms of deployment, we've been on a journey here. So starting back, I guess, 2012, some SIs in the room who've been on those, have seen the good and the bad with us along the way. But really, ultimately, we started off looking at weight control and green belt, black belt projects, focused on the operations and quality module of MES. And from there, then, started, and that was kind of the snacks journey. That was kind of iteration 1. Iteration 2, we had kind of an unfortunate sequence of events that occurred for our business. So we focused on barcode vision system integration, building on top of what we had started as a base, and in doing so, kind of looking at the commercialization process in total, making sure we're accounting for, how the business commercializes products, and that we did that in a responsible and automated way, so we weren't adding more manual work to a pile of manual work that already had to be taking place. And most recently now, with learnings and trials and tribulations that come with it, have kind of pivoted now to a little bit easier space, the performance side, honestly, equipment efficiency, how is my assets performing? It's a lot cleaner, not so subject to process and people, as we know, are variable that are tough to plan for, but ultimately it's been quite a journey. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with everyone. What are our goals? So for over the next 18 months, we're trying to get to connected factories across our enterprise. We've got varying degrees of maturity, and from all the way to the starting lines to some plants that are fully digital. 2 right now, and to get to it's going to be an aggressive 2 years, but I think we've got the learnings, we've got the partners, we've got the support, to get to that aggressive goal. And then, you got to manage your technical debt, and ultimately, if we can get to that level 3 maturity, that's not the destination, right? This is a journey. It's just a means to the next evolution, which would be, smart factory. And then, looking at more automation and autonomy, as the journey progresses. So, is that all right, Sri? Look forward to the discussion. Sorry.
Hello, Sri, thanks for having me today. So I am Lauren Volley. I am a Smart Manufacturing Program Lead for Cargill. So Cargill is primarily an agricultural and food ingredient company. And so we are providing products to manufacturers, food service, retailers, and directly to consumers as well. So we have a really broad portfolio, and I'm part of the company within Cargill known as Global Edible Oil Solutions, where we refine and package vegetable oils. So Cargill as a whole, we're located in 70 countries, and we have over 155,000 employees. And so for our Geos business specifically, we have 27 sites globally. And so we've been on this journey for a while too, and when Sri asked us to say, how long have you been going down this road. It's really hard to put end caps on because it's just this continual evolution, right? And so I put about 8 years, ever since I joined Cargill, we've been looking at ways to standardize on our ERP systems, MES systems, and then, more recently moving into like advanced analytics and modeling and those types of initiatives. And so through this journey over the last several years, some of the things that we have had as challenges have really been around the people and process. And so it's been really refreshing this year. I kind of noticed a theme as I was listening to talks throughout today, and even within the keynote, there's been this theme of talking about process and people and how they're embedded in the technology. And it's not about just bringing technology out and plugging it in and saying, go use this, right? And so I think that theme has become more apparent for everybody in industry. And so I think like everybody in the audience probably has something they can relate to where those challenges and things you have to overcome are really around change management. Standard processes, right? You are certain that if you're going to go digitize something, you're going to figure out that you're not doing it consistently across all of your facilities, right? And so really, it opens your eyes to where you need to get better standardization. We have had a lot of balance between immediate and long-term results. So a lot of what Cargill is doing currently is that foundational work. Again, I've kind of seen that theme throughout the conference as well, is how do you get this foundation in place? And that takes investment. And it doesn't always have immediate payback either. And so being able to tell the story about where we're going long term, but then also identifying these short-term wins that you can go after to show the value while you are moving along on this journey. We have also, kind of on that same topic, had a lot of discussions about central scalable solutions versus the things that you just keep as ad hoc, right? Like what are the things that the sites benefit from having access to and they can just manage that ad hoc, and what are the things that you want to scale and have consistent across your facilities. Sort of the last item that I feel really strongly about is just being really critical about your priorities. And so as everybody kind of leaves the conference at the end of this week, it's super energizing and there's so much great learning, and it's so easy to go back and say, we want to do this all, right? Like, let's just go do everything. And so being really critical about prioritizing and picking the things that you're going to execute and on what timeline, because if you try to do everything at once, you're going to fail, right? You have to be agile and try to figure out the things that have the best payback rather than trying to do everything all at once. Yes, that's a little bit about Cargill. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. Good, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here late on towards the end of the day. So my name is Chris Pereira. I am the Associate Director of our Colgate's Global Plant Systems team. Hopefully everyone knows Colgate, similar to Campbell's. I think we're hopefully in just about everyone's house. We focus on oral care, personal care, home care, and pet nutrition. Hopefully you recognize some of the brands on the right-hand side, from Colgate toothpaste to to soft soap, and some of them may be the newer brands that you're not familiar with PCA Skin, Hello toothpaste in the naturals market. So our manufacturing journey, I put on here 27 manufacturing sites, but really Colgate has over 40 manufacturing sites around the world. I focused on 27 because they're kind of more our highly automated plants that we really focus on in 16 countries and on all 5 continents. Our manufacturing journey, I put kind of at the end here, it says 3 years, but continuing, but really it's been an evolution for a long, long time. Our MES deployment started at about 2015 is where we really started. Started with a strong MES deployment with system platform. Our focus was on downtime, quality, integration, and integration with SAP. And as Lauren said, focus was really an important part of that decision, right? So when we did that MES deployment, we made sure that we wanted to focus on very specific areas. You know, there's lots of things you can do with MES, there's lots of things we could have done with MES, but we needed to keep that focus in order to get it deployed. You know, because that was one of our goals, was a very fast and rapid deployment. We needed to deploy it in 22 countries, and we had 3 years to do it. And so the only way we could have gotten that done was with focus, you know, around exactly what the features and functions that we wanted to deploy were. Our goals and challenges, you know, we needed to replace a legacy system that we had, which was why we had a need for speed. It was completely out of support. It was a custom homegrown solution. The folks that knew that solution, supported that solution, you know, they were no longer with the company, so we needed to get it rapidly deployed. Connecting to SAP for master data and production order information was a key goal of that project. You know, we needed to not just replace what we had to make it better, and that connectivity was a key feature that needed to be in place. The challenges that we had, I mean, there were many, you know, too many to list on this slide, but the couple that I wanted to focus on was maintaining standards throughout the deployment. As you can imagine, going to 22 different plants across multiple countries and multiple categories, each having very different processes. Maintaining standards was a challenge. And then again, you know, the main challenge was getting that rapidly deployed in a 3-year time frame. So looking forward to the conversation, and hopefully we can impart some of our knowledge.
Thanks. Great.
Good afternoon. I guess I can yell. So good afternoon. I'll pretend you're my kids. So my name's Craig Ferry. I'm a Director of Advanced Manufacturing for Gypsum US. CertainTeed is actually the building materials in North America brand of Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain is a very large multinational company, about 165,000 employees. Everything from glass that goes into Tesla to Norton Abrasives to CertainTeed. So for my compatriots here on the panel talk about hope it's in your home, I'm saying I hope it is your home. So your walls, your ceilings, your siding, your roofing, you name it. Hopefully we're there and involved there. So Gypsum US is it's 9 plants, 11 lines, so not quite to the scale as some of the others I've talked about. But we went all in with AVEVA. From the MES to historian, we changed historians from where we were. We kind of rebuilt everything from the ground up to deliver what we felt we needed to deliver. We're about 6 years on this journey, and you know, it's the kind of standard challenges I hear a lot about. You know, we are data rich, very, very information poor. We lacked a lot of visibility, you know, inconsistency, you know, the accountability and transparency within our manufacturing operations was not always brilliant. And we've kind of worked through all that with the ecosystem we've built. And now it's a lot about kind of how do we utilize that system, you know, that driving that data-driven decision making. We now have a nice ecosystem in which to work within a data, but then our challenges are how do we bring like the continuous process data that's time-based and the discrete sort of data that you get from an MES, the quality data, that sort of thing. And we started working with companies like BrainCube to try to put all that together to do something actionable, right? Turn it all into actionable information at the plant level. And then, of course, the ongoing challenge that we all face is how do you build that engagement on the plant floor? It's nice to make these very expensive, sometimes, you know, investments, but we want to make sure we drive value from that investment. So finding a way to get everywhere from the plant floor to the supervisor, the managers, the plant managers, the VPs, how do we engage everybody to extract that value from those investments? So that's what we're kind of driving to right now. So good luck with this.
Thanks. All right, so quick, to get to know the audience, show of hands, how many folks are part of multi-site deployments? Okay. And of these deployments, how many have, let's say, some kind of a formal centralized structure like a smart factory council or a center of excellence? Okay, fewer. Okay. So, quick confession to make. So for the first 15 years of my career, I was on the enterprise IT side. And then in 2010, I fell into what I call the rabbit hole of process automation. And if there's one thing I can tell you, that I'm humbled by the complexity. And this complexity is not that well understood on the, the leadership level or the IT level. And it's an ongoing journey to help, people understand what is it, that we're dealing with. Because, when you talk to, heads of operations, everybody's feeling the pressure to accelerate the digital transformation journey. And, some things just can't be accelerated. And people need to, we need to help them understand what the challenges we are faced with and what kind of support we need. So when we first got together in a huddle to start this conversation, the one question I posed to each of them is, if you could go back and give a piece of advice to your younger self, or when you're starting this journey, what would that be? And so to, kick off the conversation, we came up with, 4 topics, right? Think of this as a starter list. There's probably a lot more. And as we continue the conversation, we can think of this as, all right, is this issue, is it tied to, how you manage the software lifecycle? Is it about project execution? Is it value and change management? It could be all 3, right? So with that, let's tackle the first one. So while we share our thoughts on what we have up here, you can go to slido.com and log in and start to post your questions for the panel, and we will discuss these. If you have a comment to make, raise your hand, and please share your perspectives too. So with that, while you're logging into Slido, maybe we can tackle that. Stephen, perhaps you can tackle that first one that we have there. Yeah. The importance of scope and focus.
So there was a lot of show of hands for multi-site deployments in the life cycle of it. So just show of hands of how many people are in the throes of a multi-site deployment right now. And then of those hands, how many people are building a business case currently? Okay. How many folks have entered into development and a pilot, so to speak, trying to demonstrate value? Of the people, how many folks know that have a very clear understanding of what problems they're solving for? Or maybe have questions of, think that that's an opportunity. Let's go that way. So how many people think that, are we deploying technology, or do you have a solution for this multi-site deployments that a problem, a specific problem that you're going after? More the case, okay? You have an opportunity, or you know exactly what you're solving for, sir? Well, good for you, okay. Yeah, so when Shri asked this question, I took some time to reflect, because you get heads down, and we're, it's a constant, as Lauren said, constant execution continuously. It's really not a destination, and as soon as you kind of grasp that, and you're constantly refining, adapting, finding new ways, simplifying, trying to improve your total cost of operation, your integration capability, making sure your users are happy and they understand how to use the solutions. Quick show of hands, food and beverage industry, back to the multi-site deployments. How many are food and bev? And then how many chemical? Oh, and then oil, gas is the rest? Okay. So, I'm not going to tell you anything earth-shattering here. I think one of the things that I think has served me well and Campbell Soup well is building, and it just happened by the leadership at the time, building a diverse group of individuals, right? You hear center of excellence, but diversity of thought is huge. It seems like if you're all on multi-site deployments that you already have your senior leadership on board, you've already got funding, you're on the path. So it'll be interesting to see some of the questions that we get. Just ultimately, understanding what you're solving for, and that I can't reiterate enough, focusing on small achievable goals, which can be a dichotomy with engineering, IT, engineering, once the traditional, waterfall, IT likes, to iterate and get some quick wins. We're all pretty much ultimately sounds like on the same journey here. So I'd be curious to see some of the questions.
Great, Stephen. Some of the stuff seems obvious, but it's funny that every few years we have this let's get back to basics conversation. And a lot of that is, doing just that. The next topic, the organizing, actually putting the structure together for multi-deployment success. Chris, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I know one of the things that was key from the Colgate standpoint, I mentioned we needed to do a rapid deployment. So the only way I'm sure there's many ways to do it, but I guess the way Colgate approached it and what worked best for us was creating a center of excellence, a team of Colgate individuals that would help deploy the solution. So we built a team of about 9 people, globally deployed with some folks in each region. We partnered with AVEVA and had an AVEVA partner in each region that the Colgate team could learn from. And the key for us was being able to own the solution after it was deployed. We didn't want to rely on an SI or AVEVA. We needed to own the application and be able to modify it, change it, troubleshoot it. That we always, of course, even to this day, we still rely on our partners, whether it's AVEVA or some local systems integrators, to help us when everything goes when everything goes to heck. But when it came to deployment, we really needed to ensure that we had that center of excellence, and then regional folks that were able to deploy it locally. And I think it also helped with the focus, right, which is really the first question of if we didn't have that close team, we could have very easily gotten out of control. Certainly there were unique functions and features that each site needed to have, but we were able to keep that to a minimum by having that team in place. If not, it could have very easily just gotten completely out of control. Every site would have had a different flavor of the application in MES, and long term, now 5 years later after our rollout, we wouldn't be able to maintain it at all. So that's my 2 cents on the deployment.
Yeah, on that topic of project and execution deployment, just yesterday I saw a Gartner report, and this was on supply chain, but they said, make sure you interview your program project management solution architect, because those 2 roles can really make a big impact, right? So, yeah. All right, so next topic, data harmonization and standardization. Lauren, you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, so Sri asked us, again, what would you, if when you were starting, someone gave you a piece of advice that would be most helpful, what would that be? And so for us, we just, 5 years ago, we were talking about standardizing within individual systems, but we weren't necessarily looking at how to standardize across systems and across sites, right? And so data harmonization has been a huge challenge for us, a big hurdle, something that we're constantly maturing in, we're still figuring out, right? But when you want to do your advanced analytics, right? So I'm part of a smart manufacturing team. We are responsible for rolling standard solutions and helping our sites to digitize across the globe. And so in some cases, with our ERP, for example, we've got a standard system. In other cases, maybe with line monitoring tools or MES systems, maybe we've got a variety of solutions across the globe. And so in general, how do you bring all of that information together to be one picture, right? And so we have done a lot of work the last couple of years trying to understand what are the threads in these data sets, right? How do you connect them? Simple things that we just never, you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you run into a use case and you say, oh, this is important now. Something simple like, what do you call the site, right? What is the site name? In system A, maybe it's called plant A, and in system B, it's called plant ABC. And so now when you're trying to harmonize information and you see, I want to bring up a report and I want to pull this plant, and I want a piece of information that's from the MES system and a piece of information from the historian and a piece of information from the ERP, it can't connect those unless you give it a thread to have that commonality. And so that was something we did not see at the start of our journey. That became more apparent for us as we started to have like really specific use cases and we started to pull this information together in like a cloud atmosphere. And so if you haven't talked about data and a data strategy and a naming strategy and how you handle assets, how you handle site information, how you handle product information, right? It's for every type of data set throughout the supply chain, it's important to understand if there are standards in place for your company, and if not, is that something that needs to be discussed?
Great, fantastic. Is this stuff resonating, making sense? Good. Last, Craig has some thoughts to share on culture, people engagement. Again, when we go deliver software, we don't get to do a lot of that, and I think that is so critical for adoption success. And we've been lucky to have someone like Craig, work with us, coach us, etc. So, Craig, please share your thoughts on this.
I love the hindsight questions. So when we first started out, I think we did a good job of recognizing the failure points we've all kind of seen in the past when we've done kind of large implementations. We moved almost immediately after initial failure of trying to train by PowerPoints and in Teams to a more resource intensive and in a way, not in a way, but expensive way of doing individual training of operators, supervisors, managers on site to allow people to kind of move at their own pace, ask questions. Because you've all probably been, well, even today, you run around and questions are asked and very few people actually raise their hands, right? Same thing happens in an operator, in a team environment. So I think we recognized that very well. We started a project called Embedded. So how do we engage the people to, again, kind of drive value, leverage what we're trying, the investment that we're making. We were all very excited because we see all the grand possibilities that we're going to get from these systems and these new technologies. And immediately we all get very frustrated when not everybody else sees it, right? The guy on the plant floor, what's his main concern? Or even a supervisor, or even a manager is, what's in it for me? How does it make my life better? So we didn't quite address that up front very well. Our view of Embedded was we were going to spend essentially 5 weeks at each plant. We were going to come back in 30 days, and we had these very nice measure of assessments to see how we were doing with our shift meetings and how we were doing on the plant floor and up through management. Anybody that's very familiar with lean manufacturing, know the term Gemba. We were trying to drive and use the system to drive people, managers down to the plant floor to actually see where the work happens. And that was all part of that process. So we would do the assessments, kind of review it with the teams, and we come back in 90 days. But that's kind of where we left it. And it's very apparent that for us that because of the different cultures in the plants, that it's not long enough. And it's really an ongoing, continuous, and it's very, very dependent. So we'll have a plant with a plant manager who had bought in, all in, who sets the expectation that this is important and what we're going to do with it is important, and that drives it down through the organization. You get another plant where it's, hey, they just dropped the system on me, I'll run my reports, I'll use it to, a business, and then that's it. So, and that's a challenge we still continue to try to strive for. So, we're a different model than what Chris was talking about. We very much rely on AVEVA to provide solution support. We did not want to put the headcount on staff to do the implementations. So we probably support with a couple people 90% of the issues that pop up, but we do rely on the services both from AVEVA for implementation. And then, so if you look at the structure of my team, we have a little bit of that, but it is from our MES system up through the organization. There's a gentleman who knows SAP. How do we connect with customer service? How do we connect with planning? How do we connect with finance? And then we have also a gentleman that we just recently added for data strategy manager for manufacturing. So kind of that enabler, how do you actually use the data, get people to want to use it? And then to my other comment about the embedded project, we actually have a gentleman whose job it is to go to the plants and try to understand how we improve, because we're asking our people to change their roles. Right? It's your expectation, you put the system in, that we want you to use the system, we want you to use the data to make good decisions. No longer sticking the finger in our slurry and figuring out how much raw material you need to add, right? We actually want you to use it to make a decision. Lick it. Exactly. Maybe it might work for Colgate or Campbell, but not for gypsum slurry, no. But you get the idea, right? So that's where we've kind of had the structure and trying to continue to work down that path. And I don't see that ending, not if we want to get the full value of what we're doing.
Great. The questions have come in, so if we can switch to
Exciting.
Slido.
20 minutes left.
All right, so the questions that been upvoted most is, was there organizational changes to create blended IT/OT groups?
Great question. I'll take that one. I don't know if we have to find you guys, but we kind of self-blended with the specialty engineering group, and we were part of supply chain and then moved into IT, but saw the need and the dependency, and it even goes beyond just the system solution groups and engineering infrastructure network. We've got a pretty much kind of a center of excellence, kind of homegrown, without leadership telling us, this is the way that you need to work. We kind of found our way there by necessity, ultimately, to be successful. Because the convergence of IT and OT now, it's no more trying to work together. The worlds have collided, right? It's happened. You have to move past it and live in that new space.
It is a great question because it is a collision. It's two different, the OT guys, the automation engineers who are in the plant, they don't want to run patches. It works. My plant runs. The IT, of course, they want to patch monthly for cybersecurity reasons and all the other good reasons, and that caused an immediate conflict. Who has access to what? So we did have to spend a lot of time trying to first build trust, and then kind of draw lines on who's going to be responsible for what. And then when we did the MES implementation, we actually kind of went in between the two. So the OT folks can still run their SCADAs and still what they need to do with their control systems. And the IT folks that still could do what they needed to do on the business side of it. And we were kind of split in between, like we put our own SCADA in, which helped with plant to plant to plant and the variations we saw. So it is a big conflict, and at least in our organization.
Yeah, and we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, we call it the Bart Simpson model. It's, there's no exact fit for some of the responsibilities, and I guess there was no formal organization changes in our company. I would say there's about 2 or 3 IT folks that now they reside in IT. My group reports into supply chain, and we have about 2 or 3 IT folks who act as our interpreters to the overall IT organization. Is that a good way to put it, Tammy?
Sounds familiar.
Our IT organization is so big, has so many different silos that we couldn't navigate it as part of the project. So that they were kind of a core group of folks that we could go to that knew what we wanted to do on each part of the project, and that's how we approach it still to this day.
Yeah, I like that you say that translation, right? And so for Cargill, we have a dedicated IT organization. And so I feel like we've always had a corporate group that would support our businesses, right? Because our edible oils business is just one enterprise within a larger organization. And so we have central smart manufacturing teams, and those roles have been growing significantly, right? And so they kind of serve as our translators, right? So we've got people embedded within each business as well as from a corporate perspective. And so it's kind of like this translator skill set where you have the background, you understand what IT is talking about, but then you also know the business and you can understand what the pain points are, right? And so having people with that dual skill set that can take a problem from the plant floor, translate that into a set of requirements, right? What are your functional requirements that are needed? And then communicate that in IT language to IT is really valuable.
So if I can dig into this blended, right? Oh yeah, please, go ahead.
I think I have just a comment about the first, the question about IT, OT blending group. Again, it's based on my perspective, but I just wanted to see what your comments are. As far as the manufacturing MES system is concerned, its whole thing is meant to make our manufacturing processes more efficient, scalable, visible, and traceable, right? So, having said that, now what seems to be happening is we either see the people who are exceptionally good in IT skills and who don't have much exposure in the OT meaning especially operations, the plant operations. And on the other side, you see the exceptionally good mechanical, chemical engineers who knows in and out of the plant process, how it runs, how the reactions happen, but they just don't have how IT can complement or how it can help them to make their processes efficient or make their day-to-day work more efficient by leveraging IT. So. I mean, if I were a decision maker, I would look for some people, who have worked in the plant, who have good understanding about the process, plant, what machinery means, what the equipment means, what the utilization means, all those kind of things, and who has during the progression he has just transitioned or crossed the aisle and gone into the IT. So a person who can speak IT language to the IT person and the process language to the process engineers and OT language to the OT persons. So that is a kind of workforce if we have as a part of the group. Probably a lot of those gray areas or the confusion which comes between when we try to work as a collaborative team can be resolved very quickly. So this is what. If you
find a person that has all of the skills that you just described, I'd like to hire them.
Yes.
The reality is it has to be a collaboration. I mean, cyber threats are real, right? We have to patch way more than we did in the past.
Right.
Our networks are getting old. We have to continue to upgrade our core switches, and we've got to protect our data and our plants, right? So it's an adaptation. There's no silver bullet for certain, but
I'm just sharing a bit about my personal progression.
Yeah.
Was a chemical engineer, worked in refineries, petrochemicals. So when IT guys will come to me saying that they would like to help us out with improvising the processes, I would think what are they going to do to me? I mean, how are they going to help? I just wouldn't have any clue. And I would just support them to the only limited level, because I just wouldn't understand what they're talking about and what they want to accomplish, because I was never on the other side of the aisle. But over the years, things happened in such a way I had transitioned into IT. Then when I started learning IT, then became a kind of a very proficient person. Then I started realizing that there's a lot of things we could do. As an IT person, we can do a lot of things in the process specific areas. But unless you have someone who can understand both and who can speak both, that would definitely help a lot in building a very robust and a long-term solutions.
But what I'm hearing is that IT is from Mars, OT is from Venus for the foreseeable future. And to address this, it's going to take a while because, like where are they coming from, right? This knowledge doesn't come from a university or it's a lot of hands-on stuff. So no easy answers at the present time. I think it's just more communication. Right?
And probably a lot of people are feeling like you are, right? It's just the natural curve feels like, but you just have to invest the energy in collaborating, right, and understanding where each is coming from, what the needs are, because there will always be conflicting objectives. Today it's patching, IT and engineering. Tomorrow it'll be data science and people trying to get a hold of your data, or SaaS, and how that's going to flip you upside down. So I think you got to take each day in stride.
So we've got 10 minutes left, and maybe we can tackle the next two questions. How did you focus on transformation deployments while also supporting legacy systems?
Got rid of the legacy systems.
Well, for us, it was relatively easy because our legacy systems were obsolete. No development was happening on them at all. So, and we were going full replacement. So when we were doing transformation, it literally was turn one off, turn one on, and start that process. Now there was a kind of a phase that we go through where we're doing like double entry, which is very painful for any operator to do until the plant felt comfortable. So for the first implementation, the pilot, that happened for like 2.5 months. The further implementation is about a day and a half. So it was about gaining confidence and doing that. So for us, really the transformation was pivotal, right? We weren't worried about, we weren't going to maintain the legacy systems, except try to keep the data.
People taking paper off the floor? Is that a lot of part of the multi-site deployments they're focused on? Anybody? Challenging, isn't it? Because they're already working suboptimally. You don't want to just digitize a suboptimal process. So we didn't really talk a lot about operational excellence, but they're a huge partner and really the backbone of a lot of our digital programs.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out with a lot of times you see that shiny object, right? And you say, oh, I want to go do that. Like, let's go implement this new thing and it's going to fix everything for us. But I think going back to basics, right, Shri? It's like every couple of years you say, are we doing the basics well? And so looking at like your manufacturing excellence programs, if you've got CI programs, do you have standards in place for processes that you might want to digitize, and just looking at things that can be improved that take no investment, right? It takes time investment, but it takes no money. And so there's probably some opportunity on the table that you can go and find existing opportunities that can be executed that will make your digitization journey less painful.
Great questions. So some of these I feel like, it's almost you start answering it in a philosophical way before you can get to an answer.
There's a lot of variations of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they keep switching here.
So all right, just from a time check perspective.
Yeah. So for talking about the biggest lessons learned in regards to good data, right? Like good data governance practices. There's a lot of angles you can come at this from. So what is good, right? So for the quality of the data is one thing, right? So understanding if what you're collecting is accurate, if you're using a historian, the types of compression settings you're using, is your system in good health? And so that's a whole, we could talk an hour about that in itself, right? So if you've got a PI system or a different historian, what are you doing to govern that system and make sure that the information that you're collecting is good, right? And then in terms of how you bring all of that information together, so kind of what does good look like, there's, again, so one of the examples I'll use is we've been standardizing our asset data, okay? And so how do you take a pump that does the same function at multiple facilities or centrifuges where you want to look at a fleet of equipment across the globe, right? I want to see how every centrifuge performs against one another. What are you spending to maintain it? What are you, how often are you executing PMs on it? Do you have the same equipment maintenance strategy assigned to this asset that you have in 100, maybe there's 100 of them globally, right? And so we have taken asset data and defined a standard on how we are going to name those assets. And so it doesn't matter if that asset sits in Sydney, Ohio, or in Europe. It is a deodorizer outfeed pump, or it is a primary centrifuge. And so, again, it was the standards development that was the hard part, right? So that's where we spent all the time. Then having that in place, how do you then implement it into each system that has asset data? Because it might be multiple systems. And so for me, when you say like, what does good data look like? I always think about, can I connect my data? And are those...
Is it blendable?
Is it blendable? And are we, when we say the name of an asset as an example, do we know what we're talking about? Can we tie it back to P&ID? Can we look at it as a fleet of assets? So I don't know if that answers the question, but whoever asked that, if you want to talk data more afterwards, find me.
Yeah, where's Clinton? That's a great question. I think there's a lot of, I don't know that there's a right answer. I will tell you though that we've done it both ways from a maturity standpoint. So ERP was in place for us before we did MES. There was a little bit of concurrency there with some deployments at the tail end, but SAP is our ERP solution. So the discipline that you get from an ERP system is going to be an MES solution's best friend when it comes to, you know, you have a finite scheduling sidecar that you can rely on to dispatch a production schedule, whereas if you're doing it on spreadsheets and, you know, 9 times out of 10 the plant gets a production schedule and they say, yeah, that's not how we run, and they do their own thing, or you say make 10 mixes and they make 20. That's not friendly to an MES solution. So I would just say that an ERP brings with it the discipline, you know, not a silver bullet, but certainly more discipline to help ensure your MES solution is a little more stable.
I'll actually just to comment on kind of both of those questions, the data and the ERP question at the same time. It's definitely helpful to have the SAP system in place before MES, because it does drive a little bit of standardization, but honestly, that's one of the challenges that we faced at Colgate. The way our SAP system was implemented, we didn't have one central implementation. We actually have regional implementations of SAP, which therefore created data differences that we didn't even think about at the beginning. You know, there was a little bit of assumption that went in going into the project of, well, it's all SAP systems and they're all going to be exactly the same. But once you start digging into it, you find there are data differences. People called things different. People did things different ways.
Using the same field for 2 different purposes.
For different purposes, exactly. So just to kind of tie those two together, that yes, as having SAP and an ERP implementation is good, but it can also create some additional challenges on the data end.
Just so much enthusiasm.
The Italian came out.
That's again where like the process and the technology merge, right? So you can't separate them. You have to always consider the process every time you're putting a new product in place. And so I think the SAP example is, I mean, that highlights it perfectly.
So I don't know if you can pull that right.
How about we tackle this one? Did you develop your own change management capability or use a third party? Maybe there's something.
So again, we did not want to go in with a lot of overhead or adding of headcount. So, you know, I will be honest, we didn't build a large change management system ahead of it. Our change management system was you know, developed during implementation. You know, we had things ahead of time what we want to do, but we evolved. You know, from the first one to the 9th one, you know, it was a bit different in terms of how we evolved. Now we did use a company called InSource Solutions that helped us at the plant level. So we had them there when we would do, I mentioned training and engagement, that kind of stuff. So they were there to help with, on an individual basis and a team basis, on that change management journey. So we added that during the implementations, and we also use them for, like I mentioned earlier, about the assessments and stuff. So I wish I could say we had some master plan, but to be honest with you, it really was trying to, adapt as we learn lessons along the way and not stick to a single plan.
So at this point, we have a lot of our systems integration friends in the audience. Do you all have any thoughts to share?
We can
Any
go,
brave souls willing
unless there's
to-
another meeting to get to at 5 o'clock, we could take a couple more maybe.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of good questions. So, my thought is a couple of things. We kicked off this conversation because we felt like there is a need for a special interest group.
Yeah.
We can't be having this conversation once a year.
No.
It needs to be an ongoing conversation, and a special interest group is a means to do that. And I would say that in all transparency, AVEVA has a selfish reason to facilitate something like this, because especially in these multi-site projects, before we get an RFP, I'd love to tell somebody, go talk to these folks, because I guarantee you how you do your RFP is going to change, because there's a lot of things you haven't thought about, right? It's fine if you're just looking for AVEVA to be the technology provider and not much else, but these multi-site programs are much, much more than that. It requires, working very, close together, and, when projects go south, you're sort of first in the firing line, right? But I think it's the right thing to do. So again, just show of hands, interest in, do you think a special interest group to keep all, address all these questions, pull that together, makes sense? Excellent. So you'll hear more from
I have
us.
all the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
we
learn
can
from
learn.
these
I mean,
folks.
honestly, we can learn from other people, right? I mean, we're still doing things as well.
And we've had different experiences across our companies as well.
Right.
Yeah. And to close it out, so we can go out, go and have a break. We have the industry, tonight's dinner. We have all the tables kind of clustered together by industry. So I would suggest that we continue the conversation, over dinner.
Sounds good, Shri.
Anyone want to share some closing thoughts, final thoughts? Too tired to even think about it? More like it?
Craig's question is pretty easy. All of ours are decentralized on-prem MES deployments.
And the one thing too I notice is there's a lot of questions about like, how do I go do this? And honestly, there's no silver bullet, right? And I think that the four of us have already determined that we have taken very different approaches as well. So I think it's almost more important to just know the right questions to ask for your organization, right? So what we implemented for Cargill may not be right for Campbell's, but we can share our experiences and then learn from them. But we also can ask the right questions about what are the pros and cons of one approach versus another. So just think about the questions that you could be asking and identifying what works for your footprint and your products that you are looking to implement.
And the constraints that you have today are not immovable objects. So you can reimagine, the canvas. Don't get bogged down in how your organization is constrained today. If there's a way to remove that and rethink, you might come to a different conclusion.
Yeah, when you find success, publish it. Right? You need to. That's what convinces people the value.
Tell the story.
And all the way up to the VPs and the presidents and the CEOs, down to the plant floor. They need to understand that what others have succeeded at, and then that way they can relate to it themselves.
Yeah, and amongst yourselves share as well, right? I mean, I think that's part of why we are here, to share with you guys what we've learned, share amongst each other, talk to your peer companies, talk to other people that have implemented, before you go off and do anything, do your homework basically. And there's lots of us who've been through it, and I think we're all willing to help and provide whatever learnings we can, because we've been through it and we know it's not easy and it's not something you can do alone.
No, it takes a village.
we've been through it. We're still in it, is really what it is.
So wonderful. I want to thank my panelists, brave souls. We said we're going to start a conversation. We don't know where it's going to go. And, a round of applause for stepping up and starting this.